Ooh, that looks tasty. Folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another crowdfunding preview, and today we are talking about Fractured Sky from IV Studio. Now, before I get started, please make sure you turn your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that is where you will find the corrections. Also, I do need to point out that despite the appearance of this, it is still technically in the prototype phase and is subject to change. For example, I do know that some of the text on many of the cards have changed just a little bit for clarity and grammar and all of those things, but just do keep that in mind. The next thing I need to say is this is a representation of the retail version of the game. There's also a deluxe version that comes with miniatures and magnets and I assume real airships and all kinds of things like that. This is just the retail version, though my understanding is the gameplay is exactly the same in the retail and the deluxe. Now, what this game is, this is a game in which each player is representing a different faction, and I'll show you just a couple of them right here, as you can see, with their fancy art that we have, like so. And each of those factions is out trying to collect these pieces of falling stars, starfalls. And what's going to be happening is, as you go through the game, these pieces of star are going to be falling onto these different islands, and you are going to be competing to be the one with the most power to pick them up. And the game is going to take place over the course of 5 rounds. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing a blind bidding, not quite blind bidding, but it'll make sense as we go through, a blind bidding of how powerful of an airship you're going to send out to each of these locations, and at the same time there's some resource management, as you might not get the starfall, but you will get the resources that are there, which you're going to be able to use to build up your power and influence. Now, if you are not interested in how this game is played and just want to jump to my final thoughts, you want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game works. As I said, the game is going to be played over the course of 5 rounds. And as I said, you are competing for these starfalls that are landing all over the place. And there's a couple of ways to get those. First off, every single round there is a public starfall. And we know right now that on the Molten Moor, which is right over here, there will be a starfall at the end of the round. And I'm just going to put that there just so we can remember what's going on. Then, in addition to that, you have these private starfall cards, and depending on what round of the game it is, there will be one or more of those out. So if we were in the 3rd round of the game, there would be 3 of them out like so, and that means there will be 3 more starfalls at the end of the round, though we don't know where they are. And then finally you have these hidden objectives, and each round a single one of these will be flipped over, and you will find out who will be the winner of that. And again, you will get another starfall. Though if this was the 3rd round of the game, we would have already dealt with these 2 here, and I'll just go ahead and show you one of them and how that would have worked. And so what happened here was, if you had had the most troop power in the torrential tropics, which is right here, you can't quite see it, it's just off the camera, the name there, but right here, then you would have won this one at the end of the round. And as I said, they're hidden, and I'll explain in just a moment how you can find out what's actually there. Now what's going to happen is, on your turn, you have a choice of doing 3 different things. You can place one of your airships, which is simply you take one of your ships and you place it somewhere on one of these islands. And this is representing your strength. Just for the sake of argument, I'll say I'm going to put it right here. Now, if you're the first person to go there, you get a benefit. You get to draw one of these other Starfall cards, and you get to have that knowledge that it's not out here. So if I draw one, because I went first, I can see right here that the Careening Cliffs is not in play. So I know that putting one of my airships here is not going to luck me into a starfall at the end of the round. And you can see each of these locations, if you're the first one to go there, you'll get to draw one of those cards. And if you're not the first person there, it simply is you get to add yourself on, and you are now competing for resources and or a starfall at that location. The next thing that you can do is you can build a fortress or a market. And fortresses or markets have cost in resources, which you can see right here. A market costs you 2 wood and a gold, a fortress costs you 3 stone, and a skimmer, which I'll talk about briefly later, costs 1 stone and 1 wood, and I'll talk about these card costs here in just a little bit. And what's going to happen then is, if you pay that resource, you'll be able to build on one of these floating platforms, either a fortress or a market. And as we're looking at these here, you'll see that underneath there are these little X's here. And those come into play sometimes on various hidden objectives. For example, this one right here, if you had the fewest buildings that were connected to four regions, you would win this one. And what these X's here are telling you how many different regions that particular floating platform is connected to. So 4 is telling us that it's actually connected to 4, and then you have these lines here, which represent bridges that tell you this fortress is supporting the Woeful Wetlands, the Dreadful Desert, the Torrential Tropics, and the Creepy Cove. While the market here is supporting the Dreadful Desert, the Woeful Wetlands, and just over here, the Sinister Spires and the Molten Moor. But for the sake of argument, I'm just going to put it over here as I explain everything else. The next option you have is you can pay 2 gold to peek at one of these cards here. And when you do your peek and you come out, you place it on one of these, and that would actually get you a bonus of something that comes back to you. Or if you're playing a larger player count game, which would be on the other side of the board, you might just be out there just with the peek, which says that you have looked at what the card is. But for our sake of argument, we'll assume that we came here and we've peeked, we've gotten our benefit, and now we know that just over here at the Creepy Cove, there will be a starfall. So maybe towards the end of the round, I want to go over there to try to claim that starfall. But of course, it would stay flipped over just like this. Then you can also pay any combination of 2 other resources to peek at the hidden objectives up here. So again, you pay and then you simply are allowed to peek for the rest of the game anytime you want at whatever the next objective is. In this case, it is have the most troop power in the careening cliffs, which are just over there. So if you had the highest number of airships there and fortresses and so on, then you would get a starfall there. And then I'm just going to put a few other things out here for the moment, just so we have a rough understanding of what might happen in any given game. So just for sake of argument, we'll say that we've kind of ended up the turn like this here, the round. And I'll say once every player has played all 3 of their airships, then that will trigger the end of the round. And once a single player has played their 3rd airship, they actually will get to pick their player order. So let's just say that the first person to put down their 3rd airship was purple. Purple would get to pick, do they want to go 1st, 2nd, or 3rd next round? Of course, if they go 3rd, they're going to get the benefit of this extra gold coin. So in that way, every round, the player order may change. Now, at the end of the round, you'll go through, and from top to bottom, left to right, you will resolve all of the conflicts. And so what will happen is you're going to flip over all of the ships, and you will add up the strength. Now, an important thing is, the sum total of all of your airships can never be greater than 10. And you'll notice that this one airship here was white around the edges because it was either my 1 or my 10. And as you can see, both the 1 and the 10 have that white symbol around it, which is a way for you to kind of bluff what's going on so someone doesn't know, do you have a 1 or do you have a 10? But of course, if you put your 10 out, that means your others have to be a 0, or you have broken that rule and you have gone over 10. And let's just say that yellow also had put that one out down here, which means 15, and that would mean all of yellow's tokens would get a -5 strength. So it's a very, very big deal to do that, and I'm just going to switch that out there so they have it. Now in this case, yellow has a strength of 10, green has 1, and purple has 0. However, purple has a fortress, which would add 1 strength, so now it's 1 to 1, and then you would look at player order to determine who gets the 2nd place tie. That is, unless one player has played a skimmer, which is a little ship that you can put out there that has a strength of 1 and will go away at the end of the round. So in this case, yellow would get 1st, green would get 3rd, and purple would get 2nd. Now, if there was a starfall out there, and we'll just pretend that this 2nd card here had flipped over and had told us that there was going to be a starfall right here. And I should point out that before this is done, you would actually flip over all of the different cards, and you would put a starfall out on all of the places that actually were going to have a starfall on them. I should have done that already, but I did not. So we would actually be right there. First place, yellow, would claim the starfall. And the starfalls are how you win the game. At the end of the game, whoever has most starfalls is going to win. Then second place, which is purple, would get one of each of those resources. So they would get a stone and a wood. Then, because they have a market, they would get one more. So maybe they want 2 stone and 1 wood, whatever. Third place would get a single resource of their choice, and if there was a 4th player in the game, they would get nothing, unless of course they had a market which was supporting them. Then we'd go on to the next one, and only purple came over here, so they would get this starfall, and they would also gain 1 resource because they have the market there. Then we'd go across the board, and eventually we'd come back down to the Wolf of Wetlands, where this is the situation we have, and with a strength of 9, purple would gain the starfall, and they would gain a single resource because of the market, while green would gain 2 wood, and yellow would gain a single wood. And then, of course, you would finish off over here. Then, at the end of the round, all of these cards here will be pulled up. They'll all be shuffled and dealt back out, again with 1 more over here. Again, these would be face down. You'll shuffle up the public starfall events, and you'll flip a new one up top. And this card remains flipped, and then this would be the new objective. And you're going to play 5 rounds. Whoever has the most starfall at the end of the 5th round will be the winner. So, what do I like about this game? The first thing I like is I love the simplicity of this game. It's just not hard to play. It's just not hard to understand. And I love that. I like the way there is a little bit of kind of hidden information to the game that, especially early on, that you can look at the thing, you can peek, or maybe there's 2 of them out there and you don't want to spend all those resources to do that. You can just send your ships out early. You can send them out fast and you can start to get a little bit of information, kind of narrow down, okay, well, it's not here, so maybe I'm just going to take a guess and see what happens over there. Maybe it's worth my going to where the public starfall is going to be and just kind of hope I get lucky. Maybe I want to spend my time looking at the objectives for each round so I can make sure I nail those. But all of that is very easy to understand how you're going to do it. The mechanics of the game are very simple, but the strategy level, I think, is quite high. Then along with that, I love how fast it is. The first time that we played, and now to be fair, I've only played this game at the 3-player count. I haven't gotten to play it more, and the solo and 2-player cards didn't come with the game right now. But it's fast. The first time any of us played, 3 players had to teach it. It took 1 hour and 10 minutes. The second time we played, it took 45 minutes. It is fast and quick and it just really works well. It also does that kind of blind bidding. It's not quite bidding, but pretty much bidding, which is your ships as they go out. It does it really well because it gives you lots of options in there. The way it notes that there's a 10 or a 1 here, it's wonderful for trying to trick people. Because you just don't know. You think, they're clearly going for that. Well, maybe they're not. Maybe it's a 1. And if you think they have a 10 there, that means you think that they have zeros in the other places, which they might not. And I think that works really well as far as that goes. I also like that you're limited to 10. It always has to add up to 10 or you're taking a pretty major penalty. And I think that's also pretty darn satisfying and effective as well. Next thing I'll say is I like the way you have the markets, and I like the way you have the fortresses and the skimmers. I think they're very easy to understand, but the benefits of how great they are is massive if you time it right. If you put it in the right place. If you play your cards right, it's just awesome and satisfying, but at the same time, dominating the fortress market, or the market, doesn't guarantee a victory. And the last time we played, Original Don, he had just dominated the market scene. He had all these markets out there, and it felt like every time he went somewhere, he was getting 4 things. And I thought, there's no way we're going to win. But he wound up losing because I managed to go through and claim all but one of the hidden objectives. So I took a different path and I managed to pull it out. And it's satisfying because it seems like there's unbeatable strategies, but clearly there are ways around it. And I just think all of that works really well together. So what are my quibbles with the game? Well, the first one is I really wish there were some asymmetric player powers. The factions look so cool, but they're all exactly the same. And that's a bummer to me because what happens is the game is not dramatically varied. It's fun. I like it. But once you've played 2 or 3 times, you understand it. And yes, you're going to play within this box that you've created, but there's not a ton of things you can do because there's not a ton of variety there. But if there was asymmetric player powers, and I'm talking like crazy powerful stuff, I'm thinking like what they did with Mythic Mischief, how they're all uniquely different. That to me would make this game just pop and really want to go back to all the time. I'd want to play 3 times in a row. Right now, I'll play once, maybe twice, I'll put it away, and then I'll bring it back out later, because it's a good game. I'm keeping this on my shelf, I'm keeping this retail version that I have, but I'd want to play it more. And so I wish that was something that they had. And I'm hopeful that might be a stretch goal. I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm hopeful. I'm very, very hopeful that might be a thing down the road. And then the next thing I'll say is, and I hesitate to say this because I know it's being worked on because I was texting Austin from Ivy Games and saying, hey, here's a question that we have. We weren't sure. We think it's this. We don't know. There's a couple spots in the rules where there's a little ambiguity. And it's just not fully clear, wait, how does this work? Does it work this way or this way? Like, well, this way seems to make sense, but to someone else, this way makes sense. And again, I know that they are working on those. Everything that I sent in a question about, the response was, yeah, that wasn't very clear. That's something that we've already adjusted. But just something to throw out there. Make sure that as you go through, just give the rulebook a look. I'm sure the one that you can see right now on the Kickstarter page is already fully clear. But check it out. Might be something that bothers you, might be something that doesn't bother you. Personally, I'm not concerned anymore because I got my 3 clarifications, and like I said, I'm holding on to this game. It's staying on my, well, if they ask me to send it on, I'll send it on. But I'm holding on to it. I really, really did enjoy it. I think it's a very, very clever little game. But really, that's it, folks. I think this is a highly enjoyable, lightning-fast game. It's not heavy. It's not deep. And while I wish there was a little more depth, i.e. those player powers, come on, get those player powers in there. I just think it's a very satisfying game to play. That's all I can say. I really enjoyed it. It's sitting out on the table still right now, and I really wish I could just play it again right now. And so I think if you are someone that is a fan of games that, again, are simple. It reminds me in some ways of Wormholes from AEG, which is another very simple but very tight and satisfying game that you can play very, very fast. If you like that kind of game that has good, solid interaction, but does not take that, but good, solid interaction, trying to outthink each other, then I think this is one that you really need to check out. And I also have to say, if you like deluxification, then this is also one to check out, because I happen to know that the deluxe version is crazy with different miniatures and magnets and snapping chips and all these things. It's going to look great. It's going to be beautiful, just like all of their other games are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful to look at. And I also think that what you see with this game is you see the real strength, I think, of IB Games is that they do big player count games really well. Now, I've only played at 3, but I want to play at 5. I want to experience that because I think it will work wonderfully. I know it will work wonderfully, and I think that's truly the strength of IB Games. And this is coming from a guy who really liked Mythic Mischief, which is basically 2 players. But I'm going to stop belaboring it. Go check it out right now. Obviously, I enjoyed this game a lot. I recommend checking it out. I enjoyed it. I'm holding on to my retail copy. And I think you should definitely give this one a look. So, there you have it, folks. As always, if I made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamps, and I'll give that into the Klingon subtitles. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe join. You can check the description for how to do that. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.